All right, well, welcome and to demystifying relationships. And I'm sorry about the video problems. For some reason, my other Google account did not work and just kept giving me a 404 message. So I went ahead and tried to pull an audible, and hopefully we'll be able to go forward with this. Anyway, I'm excited about starting this series of events, and this first event is going to be on relationships and really looking at relationships from a different perspective than what we see in our culture. And our next one I'm really excited to do is going to be at the end of January, and that's going to be on joy and happiness. And there's a really amazing distinction that can really help people understand how to live a very joyful and very happy lifestyle. So let's just jump right into mystifying relationships. And we're going to talk about, first of all, where this comes from. I get very interested in relationships after my relationship ended and my divorce. And I think we all go through this idea of why do we continue to do it? They become so painful, and they also make us feel so happy. And so a question obviously comes up in the painful part. When everything's great, we don't really worry about it, but when it gets really painful, we start to wonder, why do we continue to do this? But there seemed to be this impulse that continued to happen within me that said, no, Jim, you need to get into relationships, and relationships are a great part of being a human being. And so first of all, just kind of take a look at that just for a second. And the deconstructionist is a type of philosophy, postmodern philosophy, that talks about basically all the constructs that we've constructed as humans. And people look at relationships as a construct that humans have created. And then, you'll get into the argument of monogamy. It's not real. We should just get rid of this idea. And then, we've got the polyamorous communities and all these different things. And so there may be weight in that. But it's my belief that really being a human being is a lot bigger of a deal than, or not a bigger deal, that's not a good way to say it, that being a human being and this whole journey is about something, is an exploration that's much deeper than what our culture tells us. And that's what I found, is that when we talk about the constructs that humans have created, we can discuss whether some of these constructs are good, or are they bad? Do they serve us? Do they not serve us? And it's my belief that we're here to evolve as people, and maybe it's not this outside person or the identities that we bring into the world, but we have this divine life within a life, the spirit that evolves with us. And so we have different pieces of this along the way. And one of the amazing, great pieces can be relationships. And so if you look at the way our culture looks at relationships and the way that religion looks at relationships, it would define relationships in a very kind of a small way, where our culture might say, you need to get married. And really what they put the emphasis on in marriage is you get married to live out to the rest of your days together. And they put this real emphasis on commitment, till death do us part, and all of these things. And what's left out of that talk, or that cultural narrative, is a deeper meaning of a relationship. Meaning that we're here to evolve. We're here to evolve our souls. We're here to express ourselves in this world. And relationships are one of those areas where we're called to evolve. So if you think about the normal progression of a relationship, it starts off in that limerent stage where you're really excited and you've got all the juices flowing and you want to be with this person forever, and you feel this really strong sense of love in that very beginning, and it's quite intense, and that starts to dissipate, and then we might date for a while, and then we get married, and marriage is great for a while, and then what ends up happening in marriage is that we really love that other person, and then the things that kind of bother us about the other person start to come to the forefront. And so there's a concept of separatio and conjunctio. And basically what that means is that if we look this from an evolutionary aspect, we'll look at it from consciousness, that we're here to raise our consciousness, and this happens within a relationship. And so it's a very natural flow that one person might start to raise their consciousness, and one might not really be evolving and staying put. And so the idea of commitment, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. The idea of commitment is a strong pull to keep us together to do our work, because if you're watching this and you have done work, you understand that it can be very difficult sometimes. You go into your shadow, you go into these dark places within yourself, and it's painful. And so in a relationship, that commitment piece kind of says, okay, we should stick this out. The thing is that our culture doesn't tell us what we need to stick out. And so that's why there's so much. We understand separatio because we divorce and we leave one another because we don't have, going into the relationship and going into the marriage and going into the commitment, the idea of what this is going to look like. We kind of have our view of what the world is supposed to look like, and then you kind of share that with your partner. And then if there's any evolution along the way and somebody starts to wake up or they want to start to speak their own truth within the relationship, that's going to change everything. And it takes us off kilter, and then it turns into working on a relationship and this sort of thing. So if we look back at the commitment level of relationships, we want to look at relationships as a piece of what it is to be human. There's times when we're going to raise our consciousness, when we're going to outgrow ourselves, and then there's going to be times that we don't need to do that. And if we're in a relationship, these are going to happen at different times. So if we have this understanding going into a committed relationship, that there's going to be times of separatio, and there's going to be times of the coming together, then we might look at them, and might not end them as quickly if both partners understand that. And so I'm looking at it from a very evolutionary consciousness way of looking at relationships. And in anything, everything is true. It's just at what depth is that truth? And so in our culture, the culture is set around duality or right and wrong. So it's wrong to get a divorce, and it's right to do this or that and whatever else. Duality isn't wrong. It would spin in a paradox that wouldn't end if you said that duality wasn't true. It's true, but how deep is it? That would be the question I would ask. And so that's kind of the idea, or that's the bigger idea of what relationships. And there's a lot of different things that we have in life to where we have challenges. And if we think about relationships, not just our love relationships, meaning intimate relationships with somebody, but we look at our parental, our siblings, our family. All of those have so much more energy around them than we do with friendships. Friendships we can walk away from. Acquaintances we can walk away from. But when we get into this idea of a little bit more commitment, oh, they're family, they can't go away, kind of thing, it adds that layer of stickiness to us that has us called to do our work. And so it doesn't always become, it takes wisdom to know when to walk away and when to stay. Okay, so that's a deeper meaning to our relationships. And so I'm gonna offer a few other things, and I just want to throw this out there that at any time you can ask questions. I can see your questions pop up on my screen. If you want to just say hey, whatever else, it doesn't matter. I can see that too. I'll answer questions. So we're going to talk a little bit about archetypes and how they flow and they work within relationships, and I'll try not to make into generalizations or stereotypes, but to stay with the archetypes. And then if you have questions around them, please ask, and I'll try to give some kind of thoughts on that. So anyway, how archetypes work. Archetypes are not like stereotypes. Archetypes were looked at more like a riverbed that's been coursed into a certain direction by a flow of water. And so when we look at an archetype, you can look at an archetype, take that flow or the way that that human would move within that riverbed, and now take that archetype and take that pattern and spread it out in front of you, if you can just kind of imagine that for a moment. And now you have all these patterns, and so we have different archetypes. For men, we have the warrior archetype, we have the knight archetype, we have the trickster archetype, we have the hero archetype. Women have the goddess archetype. So you can look at them in a lot of different ways, and people use goddesses and gods. But anyway, they all have these kind of patterns that happen within them. And so I'll just give kind of a typical hero archetype for men would be the hero archetype. That is that masculine energy that says, go out and conquer the world. And so we go out and we try to get a good job. We try to land a good woman. And again, don't get hung up. This doesn't necessarily, I'm talking about masculine and feminine, and I may use male and female, but this can be in gay couples as well. It just kind of depends on, what, and there's men that have more feminine essence to them and women who have more masculine essence. So don't get hung up on the words. I just use the words male and female to simplify. So if we have these patterns laid out, and so for a man we have the hero archetype, we go out and we try to save the world. And we have these beautiful things that are not save the world, but conquer the world and conquer these things that we're supposed to do, and our culture tells us to do. We're supposed to take care of a woman, open the door for her. We're supposed to do all of these things. We're supposed to get the job, this sort of thing. So what ends up happening often is that there's a very light side. There's the light side of the archetype, and then there is the shadow side of the archetype. And so for males, the hero archetype at some time needs to be quashed. Like that journey and that go and have to be the hero has to come to an end. And oftentimes this, when we live out the pattern of a certain archetype, so if we live out the hero, if we're living out the hero archetype, but then all of a sudden we find ourselves where we listen to the cultural narrative, which means that you bring home the bacon and then you get to go play golf. And then your woman is supposed to be happy because she's now living in the American myth, the American dream myth, where now she wants something deeper. And so we start to live out the shadow side of the hero archetype, where vulnerability doesn't come in, where we don't allow the trickster archetype to come in to heal us and also to make friends with our feminine side within us. And so women will get, oftentimes will get very frustrated because they want something deeper and they want to connect at a higher level, or at a deeper level, might be a different way to say it. So the way to look at archetypes and in relationships is that you can have these patterns and you can learn about what the pattern of the hero archetype it is. You can learn what the pattern of the trickster archetype is. You can learn what the knight, the pattern of the knight. What are the things that happen, those patterns that happen? And then what you do is you can basically just take your story. If you had like a clear piece of paper, you could take your story and you could set it on top of the patterns. And this isn't a matter of labeling. You're not labeling anything, you are observing. So you're taking a look at yourself and you're saying, what patterns do I have? And so I've been studying goddess archetypes lately, and I'll just give you an example of my daughter, who we've been talking about the different goddesses and reading them. It seems that she is living out the Athena, the Wisdom course, and Artemis, and these are very goal-oriented archetypes. She's headed for getting these things done, and she's got a smidge of Persephone in her. And the one that I joke with her is Hestia. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that correctly, but that is the hearth. That is the archetype of hearth. And so the homemaker and that sort of thing. And so what I'm offering to her as a joke is that she should take on more of Hestia energy, so that she will be cleaner, keep her room together, and these sort of things. And she said, no, I like myself just the way I am. It's not a matter of like trying to change people. And that's the interesting thing. That's another story we can have a whole other talk on contaminating people by making them or forcing them to try to live out other archetypes that we want them to do. But in this case, it's just just having awareness, because awareness is the very first key in anything, is the awareness that there's something that I could bring into my life. And so a good affirmation, and people years ago used to pray to these gods that they believed, and to bring that energy into them. And why can't we do that today if we look at it in archetypical fashion? And so when we look at archetypes and how they play out in marriages, it oftentimes is the man will play out the hero archetype too far, and then the shadow side will show up. With women, there's going to be differences. So there's going to be a change with Dedemer, who is and I don't know if I'm saying that one correctly either, but that is the goddess of mothering. So if you have children now, or you want children, you're really going to be probably living out that archetype. And then if you don't have children, that archetype's going to stop and another archetype's going to flow in. And then you can see how these patterns are going to shift within a relationship, and you're going to change. And so you have to understand that people are going to change and shift themselves. And so oftentimes I would just say for men, it's probably the biggest thing that I see, or the biggest, this is kind of stereotyping, but is we in our culture play out the hero archetype too long. We're taught to puff out our chest, to be a man, be masculine, and these kind of things. And we just play them out just as our culture teaches us, instead of being vulnerable, allowing the trickster come in, allowing humility to take over our life. To be humiliated is what the trickster does, and allow us to reveal ourselves and become more in line with our feminine side and our vulnerability. And that's going to have to do with, just deepening into something new. And so oftentimes that's what happens with couples, is that they can't even articulate exactly what they want, but we always have this impulse to change. We always have this impulse to deepen. It's always coming from the universe, and it's always asking us. And so we do so many things in our culture to drown out the sounds of the inner voice that's telling us to do our inner work, to come out to the world, to love deeper, to be, to have all this richness. And our culture says, as long as you've got money, you should be happy. And things live out the American dream, which I call the American myth, you'll be happy. And we just know that this isn't true. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So, that's a little bit about archetypes. Now I'm going to talk about the work of deepening. One of the bigger parts of our own evolution, the thing that we need to work on, and we especially have to be cognizant in our culture, because our culture for men, now I'm speaking for men, is that our culture doesn't have us understand that we have a feminine part of us. And this has to do with, we do not deal with this aspect. We are told in our culture to puff our chests out, to be this masculinity, and it's this overriding masculinity. And it was kind of an interesting case, and we could see how things shifted over time. When the women's movement, we had the 50s where the masculine was very, very strong, and then women said in the 60s and 70s, we want you to become vulnerable. Then men became way vulnerable, and then women weren't attracted to them. So, now in our culture, we're in this kind of weird stage. But for men in our culture, being vulnerable, these things are not culturally acceptable. And so often men are not marrying that part of themselves. So it's our work to marry our feminine and our masculine within ourselves, and our culture doesn't help us and doesn't talk to us about that. And one of these things plays out with mommy issues that are never resolved. They just men have these weird things that come from their childhood, and then when they don't work on them and they don't become cognizant of them, they play them out in their relationships. And so if we look at this aspect, women have both masculine and feminine within them as well. And if you become very cognizant of these essences within ourselves, you can see how they play out. Like if you need to be in a very logical, and if you're a woman and you need to be in a very logical, analytical work environment or something like that, you're most likely going to bring that male essence out of you. And if you observe this, I like to spend 80 to 90% of the time looking at myself, but it is fun to go out into the world and observe it. So I've gone back and looked at some of my bosses and understood that they were not in tune with their masculine. So my women bosses weren't in tune with their masculine. So when their masculine came out, it came out very clumsy and angry and bitter and these kind of things. And then there's this being able to shift within your feminine and your masculine, and just having this awareness. So if I go and do my work and I marry my feminine within myself, I'm going to be less prone to need to go at odds with the outer woman or the person that I marry. So if I'm okay with my inner woman, I'm most likely not going to be at odds with the person that I've brought into my life. And the same goes for a woman when they are in tune with their masculine and their feminine. So I haven't got any questions, so I am going to kind of wrap this up, and I'm going to wrap it up with one last piece that I want to share. And this is my philosophy that I am needing and bringing together. And to me, is the absolute bulletproof way to bulletproof your relationship. Or if you're single and you're watching this and you want to, you want to prepare for your next relationship, you want to, be proactive in it, is there are a lot of different, strategies, like using I statements for communication. And one of the things I always say is, if you want a man to listen, take him for a walk, because men want to commune and women want to communicate. There's all these different things. But there's one big aspect of marriage or an intimate relationship that I think if you focus on this, if both partners, and if you both commit to this, it's bulletproof. I sign all of my correspondence, your biggest fan. So taking your biggest fan as a way of looking at a relationship just blows the lid off of everything. So, because oftentimes in relationships, like the very lowest level of a relationship is when we get into the me stage. I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not getting my needs met, and I'm hurting, and I'm not feeling good, and I'm not getting my needs met. It's me, 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 me. But if we can just bypass that level, that lower level of looking at a relationship, by stepping up and both people committing to being each other's biggest fan, you can't help but to extrovert yourself into your partner's world. And so as I went through all the archetype stuff and the gender and the masculine and the feminine and all these things that play out, be interested. One of the other cultural things, like this goes along with this as well, one of the other cultural influences in our world is we have a lust for justice. Our prisons are overflowing, and it's always about right and wrong, and then it's about punishment to fit these crimes. And everything that is within our cultural narrative becomes baked into us. So what we do then is we take that into relationships, and then love, or justice, trumps love as the most essential part of an intimate relationship. So how can you bypass this? By using your biggest fan. Being somebody else's fan now, you no longer go into the mindset of justice. You're going into, when somebody's speaking to you and you want to listen to them, you're curious because you want to know about this person. And so practice that. Practice being curious with your partner. Like when they're trying to explain something, stop your story. Stop the story that you're telling inside your head and listen. And what's amazing about this is that you get to know people. And my whole basis of who I am is based around your biggest fan now. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect to this, but I take this into every aspect of my life. As I go out into the world and I'm interested in people and I'm curious about people. I want to know their journey. And I can tell you what I get from this is I get a lot of people that want to share with me because I'm curious and I want to know what's going on. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Your biggest fan. Be the biggest fan for your partner. Be curious. Don't let justice trump love. And next time, and I believe it's going to be the 29th, but make sure you check all these little tentacles I've got out into the world. We're going to do one on joy. And what I want to do in this next one, too, I feel like a talking head right now. And so I am going to bring on other people, and I want to have other people's versions of my topic. And so I want some rich discussion. I'd like some people that might even zap me and question me, which I always appreciate. And I hope to see people back, and hopefully people like these, and we'll just keep continuing on and bringing these out to the world. So I bid you a good night.